Okay, so we'll get started. I guess most of us are at least here. Welcome back to the second day of Design Dialogues 12, Unlock Your Networks. The format is quite similar, where we now give the platform to the participants to share their ideas, their work, but in lieu of or in accordance with what we have been discussing since yesterday about social well-being and possibility of creative collaborations after COVID, post-COVID situations. Um, we will keep to 10 minutes per participant or per team so that we have enough time towards the end, at least to listen to some views. I know everything might not be still possible, and we'll sort of take it into a conversation in the evening. We'll go alphabetically, so we'll listen to all participants first. Again, if you have questions, ideally, I'm going to just share a link with all of us to keep writing into another separate document on the drive so that the chat messages don't disturb the participants. And then we can use those questions to generate a discussion later today, in this session or in the second session. So with that, Aparna, alphabetically, you would be the first one. So over to you.
Hi. So me and Swati, both of us are working on this together.
Aparna, both of you, for the sake of the speakers as well as other participants, in one line, do tell us who you are, what you do, and then start with your presentation. And this is a request to all participants. Just give us a quick view into who you are, what you do before you start. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm Aparna. I'm from Hyderabad, and I'm in my fourth year studying design. I'm really interested in speculative design or critical design. And right now I'm interning at Art Forward. And yeah, that's about it.
Hi,
Swati?
I'm Swati. I'm an architect. I'm pursuing my master's in public space design at Shashti. I'm in my final semester now. Yeah, and I'm also a performance art theater perf- performance artist. I do something called playback theater.
Thank you, guys. Yes, we're ready to listen to your presentation as well.
Right. So before I would just like, me and Swati, we were thinking of talking about social interactions, and how post-COVID that's gonna, even during COVID and post-COVID, how that interaction and space is gonna come into picture. So, Swati, do you want to talk about how we had a different view first, and then after discussion
Yeah.
changed?
So to actually put what we're thinking of our idea into one line, it is the need for human contact. It's the need that we're feeling for human contact, but also the how quarantine has made us a lot more comfortable with solitude, and we're craving solitude. The conflict between wanting human contact and being comfortable in solitude is what we arrived at. It started from the learnings from yesterday's uh, discussions, where we were talking about artists and how performance art has been changed, and how artists' lives have been changed. Me being a theater artist myself, how I am how there's a need for the interaction with audience, and how we feed off audience energy and co-performers energy in a physical space, and how that is changing with the adaptations to virtual media like Zoom.
Hmm. Yeah. So, just to do a very quick run through, uh, can I share my screen? So, can you guys see?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Okay. So, right now, what's happening during the COVID? We wanted to just highlight like a few things that's happening around the globe. So, I think this image is very self-explanatory. How the cone is being served without an actual interaction with the milk bottle inside a milk bottle, and this is the next example. This is more of a hack culture. How yeah, how students. I think yeah, this was in China in one of the elementary schools. How the teacher she has come up with dispensing hats. So we found this very interesting, and yeah, even this one. How after 2 months of lockdown, when the workers, the park workers, they came on Monday, they realized that this could be a good way of cutting the grass to also remind people to do a physical social distancing. So they have mowed the grass in such a way with the I think it's 2 meters or 6 meters apart. Yeah, so that was what has been happening. But when we were researching, we also came across this term called peri-personal space. So it goes about like after months of eating in front of television or like having cocktail parties via Zoom. So what expectations will we have when we return to eating and drinking normally, like back to normal? So then it asks the question of like, will our mental buffer zones, so the mental buffer zones are basically what psychologists call peripersonal space. So will they unconsciously crave solitude? Like, so we would want to also highlight on the word unconsciously how how we always want to be social animals, but I think this experience might just like uh, yeah, even though we do not want it, it could just like lead to something. So this was a restaurant in Sweden, and the idea basically takes this idea to the extreme, where they serve one table, one chair, and there is no waiter. So they call it solo dining experience. And then it says that just your inner conversation and three-course meal, and everything is served through a rope line. So yeah, this part.
So what we were basically thinking of, or the questions that the questions that came up for us was, uh, should design in future cater to increase human interaction or to maintain distance? Where it's a conflict in need also, and it's a conflict in what should be done and what should design propagate as well.
Yeah. So there was like a conflict in our
Yeah.
opinion. We don't have a stand, but we realized like there are both sides to it. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, guys. I think that's a very pertinent question to open the session with, perhaps. And the conflict is, as you said, very real and very honest, because you'll be expected to maintain distance and behave a certain way. But does that mean that it will obviously affect our um, being together? The whole idea of physically occupying spaces together, and this examples that you gave us are also quite um, provocative, if I put it like that, because this whole idea of craving solitude, it would be nice to know later what every participant feels. Is that something that they have felt until now? Do they feel this is possible as a phenomena or not? So thank you, Aparna, Swati, for giving this a good kickstart for the morning. Over to
Thank
you,
you,
David.
Ishita.
Thanks. David, over to you.
Hi. Hi.
Hi.
Hope you guys can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Yeah. So me and Manan basically, Manan. Hope Manan's there.
Yeah, Madan is here. He just needs to
Okay.
unmute himself.
Hello.
Okay.
Yes, Manan, we can hear you.
Hi.
Hi.
So yeah, me and Manan have not put way too much thought into this, but we were just discussing about what we could come up with because we didn't really have something that we are already working on together. So we just brainstormed a little and decided what is that one question we've been pondering about. And
So,
something that
David, if
came
you
up
guys
and
could
what
introduce
I
yourselves.
agreed to as well was what Manan said the other night. Yeah, oh yeah. Um, yeah, so hi, my name is David, and I've done my bachelor's in architecture. I'm currently doing my master's in urban planning from Shishti in Bangalore. And yeah, right now I'm working on my thesis project.
Okay. Hi, I'm Manan, and I've finished my civil engineering and pursuing my urban planning and designing with David. And I'm really interested in
Manan?
how. Hello? Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Manan, we can hear you.
Yeah, should I start or should I just continue?
Continue.
Yeah, I'm really interested in how nature affects our urban living and how our urban life influences nature. And this has been my query ever since. And David and I have put up something on uh, virtual reality as a way of living after post COVID. And David, do you want to start with it? I'll just turn on the presentation.
Yeah. So although we've known each other and we've done a few projects together, we've done some sort of research work on field. And initially, the conversation started off with how that would change and how field work would change. But then we were like, since everything is virtual of late, and we're not really social beings as such. We are this new type of social beings who don't really meet in person because of the circumstances, and maybe this will have a lingering effect as even after this COVID season is. And we just wanted to put up a few things that we noticed and then question how each field is affected by this and how things are moving more virtual than physical. And those were even touched upon yesterday by the different speakers and how they are trying to manage things virtually. But we just wanted to put out a few more thoughts and questions out there. And I think the best way we thought of doing this was just using memes. So yeah,
Is the
um,
presentation visible on the screen?
Yes, it is.
yeah, yeah,
Start.
yeah. So one of the first things that actually came across to us was this quote by Elon Musk, which was a long time back, about how we are probably part of a simulation, and that's what got the ball rolling for us, and that's where we started things off from, and how everything we do of late is virtual, and how that we didn't think that there was a possibility of this happening until a few months ago, I believe. And now everything we want to do is virtual, and it's not just the games that we used to have a virtual avatar of, or um, but yeah, we realize that this is a possibility, and how this will affect us in the future is something that we wanted to find out. And to do that, we just said use fun memes. Manan, could you?
Okay.
Yeah.
Now we notice a shift from you only live once to you only live online. And just, I think it opens the door for possibilities. You can just put a screen of Hawaii and you sitting and having dinner. And I think people are experiencing it, and now there are so many memes on it. So just wanted to bring that out, the perspective about it. And this is a question of what does it mean to be social anymore? Because human beings are always portrayed as social animals, and we like to interact, but because of this whole idea of social distancing and this whole norm which COVID brings, that we need to distance ourselves even after lockdowns. So what does it mean to be social anymore?
Um, okay, so another thing that we actually thought of was it's not just all negatives, and yeah, granted that we can't meet people face to face, but then again, the networks that have been established of late is much more stronger of sorts, and it crosses boundaries a lot more than it did before. But when we do think about Zoom, and yesterday I believe Sanjay had brought it up about when we go out on field or try to talk to people or do interviews, it's not just about the questions and the way they respond, but also understanding what are their reactions, what are the nuances in their emotions and the reactions they give physically, and how all that will be affected for time to come. So this was sort of a critique on that as well.
And now we see Avatar as the live reality, a new way of interacting with. So here's a small comic strip which kind of portrays the situation of lockdown also, and how a shared experience is being created using a virtual live reality.
Yeah.
And it's also affecting how we interact, how we meet people. So taking example of Bumble, how it's introducing virtual dating as a new concept in the way forward. And then we just wanted to touch upon this topic of productivity and social interaction, how they are connected. Is there a proportion into which they are connected to? And how would our working and the way we work and think be affected after the post lockdown?
Yeah.
David, you want to add something more? I think that's pretty much.
Yeah, I think that's all we had. We don't really have any deep insights of what we're trying to do, but we just had a few questions, and we wanted to ponder on what, how, and how things would change considering the virtual space, and that was our idea and intention. That short discussion we had at least.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Manan. I think, yeah, I mean, at least I understand that, first of all, we don't have answers to many of these questions to be able to even think about perhaps a solution or even a response, forget a solution. And I'm actually glad that we're using the second day to jump to the post-COVID situation or COVID and what has happened during lockdown and how virtual has taken over, productivity has been needed to be redefined, or as Swati and Aparna brought out the whole idea of understanding embodied experiences. So I think as of now, even if we could, use this platform to engage on these questions and share our views over these questions, would be quite interesting so that we have at least multiple responses of what 17 or 18 of us to be able to then build perhaps something more concrete out of it. And that's fair enough. So thank you guys for again opening up new set of questions, very relevant and very pertinent to the times we are in today.
Yeah.
I'm over to next presenter. Naveen, is there something that you wanted to share with us? So Naveen is a part of the team. He and Ananthan have sort of volunteered back end with us. They always do, but we were wondering if, are volunteers required when you do things digitally? But yes, you still do need help. So, Naveen, anything that you want to present at this point, or should we move on?
Not right now, Ishita. I'll maybe sometime later in the session.
Okay, sure. I read in the list of people Premjeet GSS. I'm sorry if I don't recognize you. Who would that be? Username is Premjeet.
Hello, Ishita. This is
Yes,
Sunani. I had a
wonderful. Hi, Sunani.
hi. Actually, I'm using my husband's system. His name is Premjit. So I had an
Uh,
issue with my system, so I have to log in through his system. So that would be me.
That's completely all right. Yes.
Okay.
So over to you. And if you could introduce yourself and then tell us what you were thinking and what your ideas were.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Sunani. I'm an architect. I used to work as an assistant professor till March 2020. Currently, I'm just a freelance architect right now. Regarding yesterday's session, there were multiple points on which I've been thinking. So this is just a brief point. These are just few brief points about post-COVID. How would the communal spaces would be? So few of the communal spaces which I have identified are parks, cinema halls, couple of devotional spaces, and transport facilities. So parks, usually we see people coming for a morning walk or an evening walk or just to while out some time. But right now, post COVID, I don't think such kind of activities will be happening in a full swing. So the remedy for this also I thought, but I don't know how fruitful that remedy would be. We can say particular amount of park, say like a 2 acre park would be housing only 250 members per an hour. So we should be restricting the entry of footfall in particular hour is what I thought. And in cinema halls, I don't think people will be approaching cinema halls for a few years from now on. Even if they want to experience the movie in such kind of a huge space or a huge screen, then the environment would be closed, and the risk of bacteria staying within a closed space would be high. So again, rethinking of seating arrangement is what I thought about, and mostly the furniture wouldn't be taken out or retrofitting wouldn't be done. So just the same way that happens in diagnostic centers or hospitals, they will be sitting with a gap of one chair or one seating facility, and an entire row would be again not be used. So in turn, again, this would be affecting the business of not only movies, even a couple of consultation firms, because they would be limiting the entry of visitors visiting per day for them. And devotional spaces, yet they aren't open. So I don't know how that would happen or what kind of precautions would be taken. But a mass congregation wouldn't be happening so far for few months now, or again there would be a limiting of footfall at these places. And again, as we have been witnessing, there would be no more big fat Indian weddings so far. So large kind of conventional spaces, all those would be rendered, I mean, crowdless for a while. And transport, again, that would be an issue nationally and internationally. There would be a lot of precautions like sanitization and all would be done. But within a flight, it won't be flying in a full capacity, or a train which will not be housing a full capacity, or a bus. Any of the transports so far will not be housing the full capacity, or it would be just running with very menial capacity so far. So these are the points which I was brainstorming yesterday. And again, I happened to have a little chat with Swati. I hope she's here with us during the presentation. So there was a point which she highlighted, saying that untouchability might again come up. That was a social evil previously. So this would be a chance again for people to again re-emphasize untouchability, and that might affect the social well-being of the structure, which would be again reoriented post-COVID. So these are the few points. Hello?
Thanks, Anani. Swati, she actually uses her name as Janni, which she told me yesterday. So she could not join us because of some medical reasons.
Okay.
But thanks for sharing the discussion with us as well. Yeah, it's quite useful when you focus it on communal spaces, because I think that's the first thing that we are all looking out for. When will we be able to go to the malls or theaters, because that's a form of recreation? Or how do we use transportation? I mean, it's working, for example, in Bangalore as of now, but personally, if I was asked, no, I'm still not confident whether I want to step in. Because I don't know what will be the response of the people. It's not really the paranoia alone, but also how do people treat people. And that is why I'm just connecting it back to the whole idea of social well-being, that even if these places open up, how will somebody perceive another person and how do they treat is going to be a question and a concern. And then, of course, the questions that you raised, Sunani, are also relevant about effect on business. Somebody just shared with me that some of the parlors have raised their prices, the saloons, perhaps because they have lesser space right now to accommodate, or lesser customers to accommodate. So the prices are increasing, and is that affordable or not? So what would it do or to these services? So again, these are questions we could take it up as a discussion. Just to bring to everybody's notice, I had shared it on WhatsApp, but I think I'm sharing it in the chat again, a document where if you can put down your thoughts or comments or questions which are coming to your mind when participants are sharing their views, it would help me especially moderate the discussion afterwards. Thanks, Sunani. I'm going to move on to the next presenter. Rahul, is there anything that you want to sort of add at this point before we move on?
I don't have any visuals, but like I do see this complexity of uh, the the people who are going to, as in it's more of a concern coming from the yesterday's discussion, that people who would are still marginalized and would possibly be more marginalized in terms of this digitalization of the kind of domains that are there. I do understand it. They are meant to cater and to serve to people who are bound by sort of physical movement. But what about? Can we also look into increasing this domain of digital services and uh, right from care to sort of basic essentials in terms of, because uh, I think we all do agree upon as humans that uh, at this particular stage of our civilization, communication is supposed to be a fundamental right. And maybe taking that into factor when entrepreneurs, when technologists look at uh, technological and digital solutions, uh, how can they sort of scale it up and bring it to the most marginalized, if possible, if there is a way. And I do think there is some way to do that. Yeah, that's about it.
Okay, interesting. Yes. The issue of communication, Rahul. I mean, it would be nice if later you could elaborate what was on your mind. But yeah, at least it's an important point to put on table in terms of communication for the marginalized, but allowing them to directly communicate as well about their situations. Okay, so over to Rick. Is that you who's using Saumava Sarkar handle? Yeah.
That's
Okay. Okay.
hello everyone. I'm audible, right?
Yes, you're audible. Please do introduce yourself and then present.
Yeah. It's me, Rick Sarkar. I am a marketing outreach associate in Match My Talent, and I personally love to write. Okay, so that is about me. And yesterday, when we were discussing, I had heard quite a few pointers which were very interesting to ponder upon. And if it could be just an interactive kind of session where I'm saying, and if somebody has any thoughts, or Ishita, if you have got any thoughts, please just make it a little interactive, because otherwise thoda awkward ho jata hai mere liye.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Thank you for doing that. Thank you.
If anybody wants to say anything, please do put it in the chat. So, I mean, just your name. So we'll sort of get you on board to respond to Rick's points.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I hope I'll not take too much time on this. So, okay. So the thing was, yesterday we touched upon a topic briefly. That was art and culture, right? How art and culture can help people and help everyone post COVID, right? So my perspective was that कुछ टाइम पहले ना, like after, before I joined Match My Talent, I was trying to write something of my own, a piece of my own, and I had isolated myself for quite some time, like bare minimum social interaction with people, be it virtual or be it physical. So what happened during that time was, I saw, and maybe it's just me doing that, but I saw similar kind of effects happening on news. So that is something I wanted to bring up. Ki, we go into an endless loop of procrastination, right? When we are not interacting with people and we are trying to be productive, and we have got a certain goal, तो एक होप आता है ना? But
Hmm.
once a situation happens when there is no longer a hope, and me coming from Mumbai, I also was interested in the filmmaking industry, and I was interested in it for quite some time. So what happened was कि वहाँ पे people go out and give out auditions throughout the day, okay, and without expecting much. They can give out like 400, 450 auditions stuff, in their whole वो क्या बोलते हैं, expectancy and hope कि someday I'll crack it and someday I'll make it big in Mumbai, right? That's the sole hope that they have. But the situation is कि अभी they cannot even go out. So that is becoming a mental barrier, that there is no hope of existence, survival, in one sense, no hope of getting out of this endless loop ki kya kare, what to do, and then this becomes an unproductive tension that
Hmm.
happens, and it is no longer like ki we can do something, and we are not seeing art as an art or as a form of expression. We are not expressing ourselves. We close our doors, right? We close our mental doors, and we start pondering. And in this format, in this endless loop, we start getting depressed and negative thoughts, right? Which can lead to abrupt actions as suicide or something, or less abrupt actions like minimal interactions. Like we don't want to interact after a point of time, right? So
Hmm.
that is a very scary situation inside our own head, right? So we can think of art or different forms of art, like be it design, be it dancing, be it singing, be it writing, be it anything, as a form of self-expression for first and foremost, rather than a source of income, or rather than a source of sending our word out.
Hmm.
First of all, we should try to know ourselves through our own expression. जब तक बताओगे नहीं तब तक अपने दिमाग को भी पता नहीं चलेगा.
Hmm. So Johnson has something for you. Johnson, why don't we switch on the mic and interview?
Yeah, so when you said those references of endless procrastination, I mean, to a certain extent, I totally believe in that. That was the whole reference of my discussion yesterday when I
Right.
spoke about the students.
Right.
But my question there is, what are you assuming would be happening in a socially distanced environment
See,
that you make such references?
yeah. So my perspective on this was कि when we are socially distanced, right, and we are having a bad day, and for example, we are a privileged. So we are coming from I am coming from a privileged background right now because I have got a job, and I have got colleagues whom I can trust, right, and I'm in a very safe and contained environment right now. But for people who have lost their jobs, they might start blaming themselves, right, for things could have been in their control at some point in the past, but are not right now. They are not. They could not connect physically, or virtual connection. Be ek time ke baad, it starts seeming meaningless. You may not be able to put your word across. Not everybody is as verbal as they would want to be. So everybody has different modes of expression, and once if they cannot express that completely, they start reprimanding themselves, they start beating themselves down mentally, and they don't see the whole situation, they just see their mistakes. That has happened to me in the past, and that has pushed me down many dark corners in my mind. So that is what I was referencing to. Is there yeah, so that was what
No,
I
no,
was.
there is no, there is, yeah.
So anyone else who I guess that was my point. Like we should try to express ourselves more. We should try to see art as a form of expression rather than a form of survival or making our word reach out to many people, because it is we ourselves that are going to interact with ourselves first, ताकि अपने को तो पता चले हम हैं कौन, what we stand for, and we can gain some kind of self confidence in that as well, I guess, you know. And that can that we can carry forward for the whole life, and that is one of the lessons that we can take from this COVID, if we look at it with a positive perspective. Otherwise, everything that happens right now is just our hypothesis of what might happen.
Mm. Yeah, I think Rick, you're putting across a very important point, especially with a forum or a platform like this, where the whole idea is about looking outwards and connecting with other people and resolving things outside. I think internally also there could be a revision of the system itself. You know how, I mean, simple things that at least come to my mind while you were talking about this was. How I basically found the right writing space or the working space for myself. Even though I live in this house now for 4 years, I don't think I've spent that kind of time at the desk where I do now, you know. I mean, those little ideas about how do you occupy your own space or your own work, or how you use it to, first of all, heal, or I mean, I'm using the heal not in again a philosophical way, but in a very practical way. Heal or communicate with yourself so that you have more clarity before you can even venture out and do something for anybody else or work with anybody else. I think, yeah, that really is a very valid point, which until now we have really not covered. So thank you for bringing that up, actually. And I hope there are more responses to this when we move towards the discussion part. Johnson, I'm going to hold that question of yours, and maybe we can all talk about it in the second half. I mean, in the discussion bit. I don't know which is going to be what.
Sure.
Over to, we have now Shravan and Shrijan. These are the last set of participants. Shravan, Shrijan, over to you.
Hi, Ishita.
Hi, I can hear you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Srijan, your mic's off.
Yes, my mic is on now.
Okay. Okay. So, so we are presenting as a team. So what we'll do is we'll first introduce ourselves. So let Srijan go first. After he does the introduction, I'll do my introduction, set the context, and we've basically structured a presentation with a framework called as DICE, which is design, introspect, contribute, and empower. So I'll be just setting the context and speaking about some of the components in the first half. And then in the second half, Srijan will talk about introspection, which is interrogative identities program, and the empower part, which is about rights advocacy. Just setting the context.
So, good morning, everyone. My name is Srijan. I'm a historian, and I'm currently on the faculty of the Center for Public History at the Srishti Manipal Institute of Art, Design, and Technology. Over to you, Shravan.
Okay. Thanks, Srijan. So I'm Shravan. I work as a consultant in the area of career, skills, and community engagement. I work with educational institutions, startups, and NGOs, and corporates as well. So I work on the intersection as such. So to begin with, we believe that we are in turbulence, and let's take any profession or business or enterprise. We all believe that all Indians are supposed to be equal, but however, we know that some of us are more equal, the ones who are privileged. Inequalities in income, opportunity, career progression, accessing resources by the government, even information critical to even survive now is a reality. There are inequalities of gender, class, caste, and a whole host of inequalities that we can all easily map out. A case point is that I know of a scenario in the recent COVID times, 100 dancers in Bangalore who got themselves out of poverty by enhancing the skills at dance and their love for it, who are making a living by training school children at various affordable private schools and CBSE schools in Bangalore. They just informed on a SMS in March that their services are not required. They used to do a variety of performances at public events, and that's how they used to help their families stay probably just outside of crawled out of poverty as such. They were struggling for even food access. People came forward and helped them with that. Just to quickly move on, a couple of other case points on employability where we can see that there is a commonality of a struggle today, which is whether it's government colleges whom I worked with, who had attended job fairs, had some job offers, or whether it is IITs and well-to-do institutes or institutes even like Sayadri, where there were job offers. Now these job offers are either deferred to the next quarter or they're cancelled outright. So we are also facing an employability crisis with reverse migration, not just in terms of the daily wages laborers and their struggles, also with NRIs who are in the Middle East who are now returning. We also have a scenario where you have people in government jobs and private jobs who've had salaries cut, deferred salaries, or lost jobs as well. We as a team believe that as we look for solutions through entrepreneurship, self-employment policies and innovation, it's important to primarily embed social well-being as well as citizen awareness of rights geographically and across media platforms in access, physically, even in vernacular communication across class in rural areas as well as city areas as well. Pretty much like a hybrid model of rights information, entertainment, therapy, and well-being. Existing frames and models can be leveraged through a design of having each individual or organization go through a set of interrogative identities as a session to help them understand their core and how they can be aware of their privilege or non-privilege. I, for example, believe for a long time that as somebody in the middle class, that I was not privileged, and with a lot of reasons listing the same. However, care needs to be a priority, not just as a right, but as a belief and a mindset. Care for all those who are not privileged and advocacy for them through both vernacular access and lobbying, integration of dialogue between. So yesterday we had Tia Care, if I'm right, if I'm getting the name right. And let's say that we look at it that yes, women have been ignored, and there are a lot of advocacy groups who are fighting for and lobbying for inclusivity. Now this can be anchored by empathy-based design as a principle. Not just yesterday we heard of it for dementia spaces, but this should be the primary principle, be it Shramik trains which are ferrying people back to their home states or flights bringing back NRIs from home. But both of them are being herded, without really looking at their primary well-being, but mostly looking at commercial costs. Now, social well-being support should be available at different physical points of the journey of each group of stakeholders, be it job loss or deferred joining dates or domestic abuse, made available just not on call or a helpline. It could be available on all social media apps. And there should be physical centers where yesterday somebody spoke about dead real estate spaces. Now these could be used, keeping physical distancing in mind as helpline areas in certain geographic zones. Because if you just hear it on the radio or if you see it on an app, you should have the opportunity, irrespective of your social class, to walk into physical space also, which is within your vicinity. Now, if we build circles of care with matching talents, but across classes, so the privilege can flow opportunities as well as offer social well-being support and accountability in social ecosystem. To come back to the use case of the dancers, the 100 dancers were eventually bridged through to a group of dancers who are from some of the premier dance groups and dance schools across art forms, who looked at identifying donors in their own ecosystem to get across not just dry rations but also opportunities to perform on some channels and other possibilities of self-employment and collaboration. As we need a grain bank, we also need opportunity banks, social well-being banks, rights banks for displaced and disadvantaged groups, homeowners who have domestic help, the domestic workers, for example. I think it's been debated for a long time, but it's high time that we fix accountability across the people whom they work for, in terms of pension bank, where people could contribute collectively to the pension fund of the domestic help in measures of the square feet serviced by the domestic help. So if somebody has a 1 BHK or is a PG, a paying guest who's paying a domestic worker, and there is somebody who has a 5-bedroom bungalow, it should be, that they contribute in the manner of their privilege. Just like parking ticket fine should be based on the vehicles they drive, and not a flat 5,000 rupees for everybody who violates it. It should be equivalent. A Mercedes Benz should be fined equivalent to where it pinches him so that they don't break traffic rules. Of course, this isn't a one point solution. Different users have different beneficiary stakeholders, and resources are required. So each time we roll the dice again and again, each time playing a different game with only social being as the end objective, as against profit maximization, which is now driving everything that we know of. So right now, I would like to ask Srijan to actually speak about the interrogative identities program and how that works, as well as rights advocacy.
Thank you, Shravan. So, because teaching is my profession and that's the only thing I have expertise in, I want to talk a little bit about what teachers, for instance, can do in this situation. And interrogating identities was born out of a course that I had offered, the very first course that I had offered as a teacher. And it is based on the premise that we all have multiple identities. And these identities may either be ascribed to us, or these identities may be something that we ascribe to ourselves. And these identities have consequences in the real world. Therefore, it is important for us to be conscious of the identities that we ascribe to ourselves or that are ascribed to us, and how these identities came to be, the power that these identities give us or do not give us, and how these identities help us navigate the world. So, for instance, when the lockdown had begun, or when India recognized that SARS-CoV-2 had come to our shores as well, it felt like for once we would stop being our many identities and be human beings. But within a couple of weeks, it was absolutely clear that our identities have remained, our identities have magnified, and the differences between these identities have grown exponentially. So therefore, I feel like a module like this, which educators can introduce in the various fora that they have available to them, might help people recognize this. And then to connect this to the notion of the Constitution and the rights and the duties and the responsibilities of the state guaranteed in the Constitution helps, because, for instance, before the lockdown and before COVID-19 became a problem in India, we had seen that a large section of at least student-led protests in the country against the Citizenship Amendment Act had brought about a constitutional consciousness, something that we hadn't seen for many, many years, at least in our generation. So that was an interesting moment where people were using this document that is usually ignored or suffered through in civics classes, and they were invoking the rights that are guaranteed therein and demanding that of the government. Now, of course, everyone's taken a break from it. But if we use and keep this document as the standard against which we measure everything, then, for instance, the migrant crisis that we have been, this country has been suffering through for more than 60 days now, you will not think of it as an act of charity. That, oh, here are these people who don't have food, so we will go and give them food. One is not doing any favors to them. The fact of the matter is, here are employed people who had managed to eke together a very difficult but a sustainable livelihood. And then suddenly, for no fault of their own, that livelihood is denied to them. So the language, even the language that we use to describe this, they are entitled to compensation, not to charity. And because everyone's turned it into this charitable exercise, beyond a few individual and admirable initiatives, nothing gets going. And there is also this tendency, I believe, that a lot of us have lost faith in the state, and rightly so, because the state appears to deliver little and promise a lot. But the state has incredible power and access to resources. And we must find the vocabulary and we must find modes of holding the state to account. If we fail to do that, then the state gets away with bloody murder, and then individuals are stuck with trying to do the best they can, which will never be adequate in a country of our size and diversity. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Ishita, I just have one closing comment. Do I have time to just close it out with a question?
Yes, you do. Yes,
Okay,
yes, you do.
thanks. So, coming from a framework of DICE, we have a DICE contemplation on Ola. If Ola, imagine, operated like a cooperative with these drivers who brought in their own vehicles, which we know they have, how would it be? if Ola had contributed 5% of each ride of the revenue to a pension account and 5% of their advertising revenue to a health insurance or life insurance premium fund for drivers to get them onto a group insurance scheme, mapped a Ola pool ride to have passengers pay in percentage of the distance they cover, so that the pool ride has the driver receive more than a single ride, both in terms of earnings, as well as him looking forward to it also from an environmental perspective. Imagine how this would be if organizations and communities look to see how they could share and ensure abundance for everyone as against for a few. Thank you.
Thank you, Shravan. Thank you, Shijan, again for opening up very different doors for all of us. I think also the explanation of the whole idea dice, I think as a metaphor was quite credible, where we are asking for responses which are much more tailored, which are much more responsive to different situations and different backgrounds and contexts that we come from, rather than have these blanket announcements and blanket decisions. And it's a very interesting proposition that would something like this at least allow for a slow but easy healing from the social discrimination, social concerns that we have. I don't want to use the word discrimination, but the social upheaval that we are facing already. Even though we accepted yesterday more or less that it is much more deep rooted, and hence perhaps an approach like this, which Shravan and Sheetan's presentation is also allowing us to sort of perhaps correct the deep rooted issues as well, wherein knowing your rights and knowing the constitutional I mean, I don't know, I don't have the right word for it, but yeah, knowing the constitution, knowing what my rights are, itself sort of becomes a responsibility of the citizen, responsibility of the designers or the creators, but also then means that allows me to that allows me to ask for or demand for what I'm entitled to. Because the more I listen to this whole conversation about privilege, it always brings me back to, do I understand what I'm entitled to? Because at least having lived abroad a bit, I've seen that difference where, over here the conversation is usually about privilege and underprivilege and non-privileges. Whereas over there, the question or the way of talking is always about, oh, this is what I'm entitled to, this much I should get, this is how. Whereas over here, and sorry for making these binaries right now, but just seems very relevant. So I'm just thinking aloud. Whereas over here, we are usually like, "Arey, itna ho gaya, bahut hai." Matlab, itna kar diya government ne, ye bahut hai. This is the way we talk. Whereas over there, you actually sue even the smallest of a vendor for things that they've done. I'm not saying that's the right way of living. I'm not advocating for either, but also understanding how we use the word privilege versus entitlement. And that just came to my mind because of the way Sheejan sort of brought up the whole idea of knowing the constitution and the awareness which had come into play in the last 3-4 months before COVID. And does that sort of help us address the issues of social well-being, whether they are deep-rooted or whether the ones which are arising out of the current pandemic situation? Yes, Naveen, you wanted to add to this now?